Hello and welcome back to This Day in History. It is a bright, beautiful, sunny, blue skies day for July 26th, 2024. And as you know, it's not about the year, it's about the day and about the history of this day. We have some pretty interesting stuff. Most of the birthdays are American entertainers. Actually, I should say just entertainers in general. Well, yeah, the bulk of them are American entertainers, I should say. Um, we have a bunch of firsts in uh, today's history. We have some attempted coups. We have some other tragedies. Um, we have some milestones for protected classes. Um, yeah, so let's get into it, shall we? So the very first birthday is 1894. Aldous Huxley is born. Aldous Huxley was a uh, a British author, and he's best known for his take on um, like American politics or just politics in general, the direction that it was going. Now, mind you, this book was this novel was written in 1932, or it was published in 1932. I actually read it. I was interested in a girl at the time, and she had suggested that I read this book and another one. And the other book was by Ursula K. Le Guin, and she talked about. It's kind of funny because it was published in 1971, and she was the setting was a futuristic Portland, and she had described a downtown waterfront Portland area that had a SkyTram, which no SkyTram existed back then. That SkyTram didn't come in until in the last 20 years, 15 years, whenever it was. That was going from the waterfront to the morgue on the hill. I mean, OHSU. I hate that place. At any rate, so Aldous Huxley, he authored this novel called Brave New World. It's actually a pretty decent book, and it showcases the future as he saw it. His future is kind of our present right now, because a lot of the things that were hit on in that book, I mean, we're kind of seeing unfold now. It's a good book. It's very British, obviously, because he's British, and so the um, the language is very much what you expect if you were over in Great Britain and living the day-to-day life over there. So Aldous Huxley, he was born on this day in 1894. And here's the first of our entertainers. American director Stanley Kubrick was born on this day in 1928. Um, British actress Helen Mirren, she was born on this day in 1945. American actor Kevin Spacey was born on this day in 1959. Sandra Bullock, American actress and producer. And I love that woman. She's a class act. I absolutely love her. Her birthday is on this day in 1964. Oh, I forgot. Has had, I don't know if he's still around. John Howard was was an Australian prime minister, born on this day in 1939. So, happy birthdays to, well, at least to Helen Mirren, Kevin Spacey, Sandra Bullock. I know are still alive. Uh, John Howard may still be alive. I'm not sure. I don't know. Just know that it's an Australian PM. So, let's get to the history of it. All right, what happened on this day in 1775? Well, here's one of the firsts. I guess you can call it a first, but the United States Post Office is established by the Second Continental Congress. Ben Franklin was named its first Postmaster General. I've had the privilege of going to Ben Franklin's grave and seeing his grave not only from the street, because there's a brick wall and then there's like this window. It's a wrought iron window that you could peer through and you can actually see Franklin's grave. But I actually paid the $5 to go inside this historical graveyard and walk through, and went to visit some of the other signers of the Declaration of Independence that were buried there. So, but I did go to his grave, and right across the street, like if you're looking at his grave from the sidewalk and you're looking through the window, if you turn a 180 and you turn around, and there's the Philadelphia Mint right across the street from you. So I got to see the Philadelphia Mint. I got to see the Liberty Bell that day. I got to see Constitution Hall that day, where the Declaration was signed, where our Constitution was ratified. The very first location for the Supreme Court where they, held their cases. It was this small little cottage-looking structure right next to Constitutional Hall. I saw that too. So, rabbit trailing, but moving right along. 1943. Here's another first for you. The city of LA experiences its first major smog as hellish cloud descended upon the city, limiting visibility. It limited visibility to 3 blocks. You couldn't see anything beyond 3 blocks. And it was blamed on, car emissions at the time. So, I mean, what I've always said about LA, it's and that's the thing, is like, you come down to LA, you're driving I-5 south, and as you're just coming into LA, you could see, still to this day, you can see that layer of smog in the cityscape. And it's just like, try as they might to clean it up. Portland did a really good job of cleaning up our smog when we had smog in the 70s. That's where TriMet came from. The bus system was very heavily used to control the smog in the city. So there was a time where they actually outlawed vehicle use in the city of Portland, and it was limited to emergency services and the bus system. And then when they found that they had properly attacked the smog problem, they allowed people to start driving in the city of Portland. But smog is still an issue today for LA. It's one of the it's one of the things that I always joke about LA. If you want to live in a smog infested city, go to LA. It's a cesspool. But moving right along. 1948, here's another first. Well, not so much as a first as it's a correction to a bad policy. President Truman signs Executive Order 9981, effectively abolishing racial segregation in the military. So he undid what Woodrow Wilson had done, a fellow party member, also Democrat. Just Woodrow Wilson's like he's scum of the earth as far as I'm concerned. I do not like him. Never have. Didn't like him as a president. He was wishy-washy at best. He was a racist, misogynist asshole. I do not like Woodrow Wilson. Nothing he ever did was really good for this country. He kind of set the tone for, the crap that we deal with today. And he had, so when the Civil War concluded, you might have if you've ever heard the term Buffalo Soldiers, it referred to the black regiments in the Union Army, but those black regiments had been integrated at that point. A lot of them were from Buffalo, New York, and they served in the cavalry. and they were very effective soldiers. They were damn good soldiers. They spent a lot of time on the frontier. They fought in the Indian Wars. That the United States spent like the next 20 years, from like the 1870s all through the 1890s, or late 1860s through 1880s, especially. Those were the what we call the Indian Wars, that U.S. Army was constantly engaged in some sort of a conflict with the native tribes of this country. The Buffalo Soldiers were very instrumental in that regard, and they fought in those wars. They were integrated. Like the Civil War ended the slavery, it ended all that nonsense, and they integrated African Americans into society. Well, Woodrow Wilson decides that, the racist prick that he is, he decides that he's going to desegregate the military after. Why? Because, you had black soldiers serving from the Civil War, the Spanish-American War in 1898, and they did serve in World War I. It's just that they were all segregated. And they were all segregated on to, through World War II, and right at the doorstep of Korea. Korea wouldn't happen for another couple of years, but it was a good thing and what happened there is that Truman come across an incident where a African American soldier was assaulted, basically for being black, and it was a bunch of white soldiers, and he was permanently maimed, and he had to be discharged from the army. He lost his eye, and it's said that Truman himself was racist, and he had no problem with the segregation until he come across this event, and the brutality and the just sheer horror of it. It gave him a change of heart, and this is why I like Truman, is that. He changed for the better. He changed for himself. He changed for the country. And he did a bold and drastic move. And he's like, this is not right. And despite what I grew up believing, this is not right. And so he desegregated the military and started that path to the civil rights movement. So even with his faults, he was a good man in my opinion. And I like Truman. So we move on to 1953. You may have heard of Fidel Castro, right? He was the communist leader of Cuba since 1959 until his death. Well, it was on this day in 1953 that Fidel Castro had attacked the Moncada military fortress in Santiago de Cuba. It was an unsuccessful event, but it did inspire the 26th of July movement, which led to the overthrow of Fulgencio Batista, in 1959. They call it the 26th of July because they commemorated this failed event, and that was the catalyst that they used several years later to oust the pro-American Batista. They called it a regime. It was the Batista government of Cuba. He was very much pro United States. We were friendly. He was friendly to the United States. We kind of installed him, but Cuba had a rising tide of social upheaval, I guess, and Fidel Castro was a staunch communist, and so he had gone to Mexico and built an army there to, for this movement. And so yeah, it was one of those things where communist kind of took its hold, and he was very pro-communist. And the thing about Castro is that he was real good about, chastising the United States and blaming the United States for all their economic woes, and saying, you're a rich country, you should give us money. And yet he lived in a communist regime or he dictated a communist regime, and he was, the plight of his people was due to his own making as a communist. And, but yet he wanted us to bail him out and give him money and raise the standard of living for his people. And it's like, well, get off your communist high horse and start giving your people freedom, and you're going to find that the beautiful culture that is Cuba is going to thrive and succeed. And they're thriving now. They're better off now that Castro has passed, but his brother took over, so I don't know how much better it is. But relations between Cuba and the United States certainly did increase, quite a bit. They're on a more positive note than ever before, and now that Castro has since passed. But, yeah. In 1956, here's a little bit of a tragedy here. The Italian passenger liner Andrea Doria sank after a collision with the Stockholm off the coast of Nantucket in the Atlantic Ocean. 51 people were killed. 1965, the Republic of Maldives gained its independence from Britain. It's amazing how a lot of nations gain their independence from Britain in the month of July. I don't know what it is. It's, there must be something about July being the, International Independence Month or something. I don't know. I find it interesting, though. 1971, American photographer Diane Arbus, she dies at the age of 48 due to suicide. She was best known for her disturbing images of people from the edges of society. So she would take photos of some pretty graphic homeless and the like, people at their worst, probably drug abuse or what have you. So she was known for her very provocative images that would really stir people up and make them think about social the social problems that we have in America here. So in 1990, we see a win for protected classes, right? So it's the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's signed into law, and basically it was civil rights protection for disabled people. It guaranteed equal opportunity employment rights for disabled people. Public accommodations need to be met, like ADA rails or ramps rather, that sort of thing. All going forward, any establishment that was built from 1990 on, they had to be handicap accessible. Older establishments were exempted, but I mean, if it wasn't feasible, it wasn't feasible. Some owners did do the stuff that they wanted, but it caught a lot of flack because there were a lot of business owners that didn't want to fork out the money to be ADA compliant, and were kind of pissy about it, but they did. I can't remember the name of the movie, but Ron Livingston was in it, and where he played the guy who championed the Americans with Disability Act. It's a very good movie. There's a cameo scene where you could see a couple of my friends the camera's panning and you physically could see, you literally see both of my friends, Ron and Willie, in that movie. I just cannot remember the name of that movie for the life of me. But Ron Livingston was in it. I just can't remember. Alright, so it also civil rights for transportation, state and local government services, telecommunications, and this is all part of the package where it was civil rights for the disabled people of America. They were basically declared a protected class. In 2004, in response to the violence outbreaking in Darfur region in Sudan, the European Union had advocated for the United Nations to institute economic sanctions against Sudan. I don't know whatever came of that. So here's another first. 2016, the DNC, that'd be the Democrat National Committee Conference. It's DNC. It's the Democrat Party. They nominated Hillary Clinton for president, and it's a historic first because she's the first woman who's ever been put on a presidential ticket to run for president of the United States. And she's the first person in any major party to have ever done that. The very first female to ever been put on a ticket was Geraldine Ferraro as VP for Walter Mondale when he ran against Reagan, but she was running as VP, whereas Hillary Clinton was actually running for president. And thankfully, she lost because I am not a Clinton fan. In 2020, American actress Olivia de Havilland, she died at the age of 104. And today's featured event is 1956. The Suez Canal is seized. So we talked about Gamal Abdel Nasser the other day when he overthrew, was it King Farouk the First, I think was his name. He overthrew him, he took over. So it's 1956. Gamal Abdel Nasser is the Egyptian president. He seizes control of the Suez Canal and nationalizes it. Basically absorbing it and saying this is now Egyptian property, blah, 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 blah. It sparked a crisis that later resulted in France, Britain, and Israeli forces briefly occupying part of Egypt. That could also be part of, when Egypt was doing its power play, one of the 3 wars that were waged against Israel in its young infancy as a nation. Egypt was very instrumental in being one of the Muslim nations that rose up against Israel. But Egypt has also become a nation that has also since come around, and anytime there's a big squabble going on there, they kind of stay out of it, or they lend their assistance to Israel in the sense of we'll negotiate, we will provide a neutral ground for you to negotiate a peace treaty with the Palestinians if that's the case. And really what that comes down to is in one of those wars, the Egyptians got beat bad. All 12 of those Muslim nations got beat bad when they really shouldn't have. I mean, the Israelis were woefully outnumbered, outgunned, outmanned, out everything, and yet they still won their war. But it was one of those things where the Suez Canal was targeted, and Egypt was basically told, you ever mess with us again, and we will flood your country, because that canal will, the dam that's there will be gone. And that to this day, that's why Egypt does not mess with Israel, because they know that the Israelis are serious, and so they don't mess with the Israelis. They play nice with them, and it's like, as well you should. I mean, you should have learned the first time when Pharaoh messed up and wouldn't release their people, and all of those plagues happened upon Egypt, and the great prominent nation that was Egypt at the time was, brought down because Pharaoh had to screw with the people of God. There you go. So that's it for today. I'm running way late. Don't know that I'm going to get much of a workout in today, but I'm running way late. I mean, I left the house at noon, and it's almost 12:30 now, and I like to be done with my workout by this time. So it's going to take me about a half hour to get to the gym, so I'll be starting my workout close to 1 o'clock, and I could still get a 20-minute workout in, and it should be fine. But yeah, I'm running late. Anyway, be blessed, take care, and we'll do this again tomorrow for July 27th. All right, see ya, bye.